Hey everyone, and welcome to the Rise episode. In this episode, we are going to discuss the journey from hands on IT leadership to earning influence at the executive table. Over to you, Abhishek.
Thanks, Sonam. Welcome, Sangram. Glad to have you early morning. Super excited. Sangram, you had a fascinating journey. You're currently, I have two roles. You're CISO and VP of IT at Sisense, but previously you have 2 decades of, it is crazy to think about. You've been doing security and IT for a very, very long time at companies like PayPal, Square, CDK Global. And you've not, I think it's like what's very interesting about your background that you've not just done operational role but you've been strategic in reducing risk and helping business grow, which is very, very important because often leaders get sort of cornered into an operational role. So it's really fantastic to learn about your career journey and would love to learn more. And I mean, you built some big teams across the board, so really would like to dive deeper. And then I was very, very fascinated to learn that you're mentoring robotics team. So super excited about that. And you're a big fan of Indian cricket team, just like me. So glad to have a fellow cricket lover. What is your favorite? Just quickly, Sonam, I have to ask this.
Of course.
Which is your favorite form of cricket?
Well, so far it has been T20 because you can't just have enough time to watch. In fact, there is a live match going on, so
Okay.
which have a screen running right here on the desk.
Yeah, I see.
That's awesome. Okay.
Well, thank you, Sangram. We're not going to keep you for too long from your first love. So,
Let's get started. So, Sangram, you have grown from hands on security roles to the CISO level. So, I'm curious, what were the pivotal lessons that helped you make that leap?
Well, I think there are a bunch of, I would say, good accidents in career, right? Like being at the right place at the right time, being with the right people who helped you, mentored you. I was just doing normal IT stuff back in the day, but I got into KPMG. I still remember the interview where partner Bob Wake asked me, like, why KPMG, this and that. I don't think I had a good answer except, yeah, I've done certain things, I can do some things, right? So pretty much for me, those days it was not cybersecurity. It was all about access, who got what access, and essentially helping big four accounting firms to get manage IT risk, right? Then fast forward, very fortunate within that company to get into accounts like Apple, Devo back then, if you remember, PG&E, Hynix. I remember a bunch of those companies. So once you get into those org and you tend to watch what's going on, you pick up a lot of skills. But one thing I always got myself involved is trying to simplify the complex things. I still remember building a systems diagram for Apple, which a lot of people used, beyond me. That was how it all got started. Always a problem, trying to solve a problem, trying to simplify things, trying to understand what is the risk and whatnot. First forward, I got into PayPal. PayPal was very kind of small, like less than a billion revenue, probably less than 5,000 people. When I left, it was probably like 35,000 people. But there's a good growth, did three different roles. But those roles were primarily focused on risk, right? The last role I did, it was around product risk and for hyper growth products like Venmo and Braintree. So when you work under pressure and when you work with uh, not having a clear understanding of the problem, forget about problem solving, right? So trying to get into the space where you're trying to figure things out, you're listening to people, trying to help each other. So that was a good learning. It was definitely amount of like you are not comfortable in your role at all. It's like literally you're running every day and trying to figure things out. In fact, those days GDPR was not even a thing. So what we're trying to, GDPR was just coming up. So what we are doing is do the right thing, and is it possible by use of technology? And those kind of questions were addressing. So some of it is the right place at the right time, but from PayPal on, it was very different because I've already picked up a bunch of skills, which is being on the first line manager, that I can start. I started connecting dots and started creating value. I can talk about other experiences, but if I go back to those days, it was pretty much hands-on, do something, create value for the organization, make yourself you are liked and respected by people, and then rest is history.
Words you could live by. Thank you for sharing that. So, IT leaders, from what I understand, often move from solving technical and operational problems to influencing CEOs and boards. Now, what does it really take to earn that level of trust?
I think there are a couple of things, and I have to try to give you uh, um, certain information around how all this happened, right? So I remember walking into one of the GM of Braintree, and they said, "You have problems, right?" And this person, I don't want to name him, person said, "I get up every day, I deal with these. So what are you telling me? Is I don't know what's happening here? I do know what's happening here." So when I was leaving almost my last meeting with him, I know of course we met afterwards, but from a professional standpoint, that was my last meeting with him. He said, 2 years back when you came in and said you have issues and I need to help you resolve those, now you're living at a place where you have clearly shown what issues have had been or what risks we are mitigating and what's those classic responses we have built over 2 years. So that itself tells a story that to own trust, you have to do certain things, you have to action, you have to produce some result for those trust to be earned. And the other aspect of it is trust is a factor of time. So you have to just stick together, grind it out, and let people watch you, then you get that amount of trust. Then trust also get transcended to other people in the sense, oh, this guy is doing fantastic job here. He's very useful for you, or maybe very useful for you here. So once you get to a good spot, and not every organization you walk in will get into that good spot, right? But if you get into those fortunate place where you feel you are comfortable, you are being liked and respected and trusted to solve problems, then you should stick there. So that was kind of the story which I remember. What did I do in that particular scenario? It is two things: simplification, information or data in a way which has substance to it, and start producing those information. So when I look at even talking to my customers, our stakeholders, board and whatnot, always be specific in terms of information. Make it easy for them to understand. Sometimes somebody wants a response in 30 seconds. Somebody wants a response in 3 minutes. So understand, read the room, trying to provide that insight. And sometimes the less you speak is also good because there are things we do not want to unnecessarily create noise about. So those are few things I've learned over a period of possibly doing it over and over again.
I have one follow-up question here. So, Sangram, you highlighted a very important point. Early in your career, you had confidence to go tell an executive you have problems. What gave you that confidence? What was specifically, how do you advise people to have similar kind of confidence that you had back then?
Well, I think confidence comes from knowledge. Confidence comes from clarity of thought. Confidence comes from having able to connect those dots and see a pattern, right? But then there are some people. I remember Jeff Webright, even if Rajesh Sharma ever listens to this, good colleagues, and even Amy and all, they'll just basically challenge the thought process and say, "No, this is not right," or "You're thinking wrong." But then some of them was, I remember Jeff once kind of coming to me and saying, "Sangram, what you just put it on this board in last 30 minutes? Can that be on a piece of paper? It's going to probably help at least 100 people within paper." So clarity of thought is critical. Uh, and to get clarity of thought, of course, you don't have to know everything, but you need to know the pieces of information which is required to create that narrative. All of us are trying to move towards one direction, right? So if you look at a corporate setting, even at a family setting, we have to optimize to some outcome. And when you're trying to think about that and how do you get there, it has to be, in my view, simplification, storytelling, and bringing people with you. Sometimes now, earlier it was like most of a lot of one-on-one and and shops and meetings. But at this stage of my career, even I'm not in those rooms, but conversations are happening. Or Sangram said so, or this is the direction we're getting from the leadership, and let's do it. So how do you even influence people when you are not in the room? How do you even influence an organization broadly with certain clarity of thought and preciseness around that. I think that's critical, but it has to be starting somewhere, being very open and honest about yourself and things like that, right? So if you are kind of solid from those principles, tell the truth.
When you mentioned the 30 seconds versus 3 minutes, like, does it come with practice or you just start gauging? Like, how do you go about it? Like, how much to talk when you mentioned that?
Well, it's very hard. It is very hard to just get to that spot. I think if you see a lot of leaders and if you see good public speaker, particularly the CEO type of people, they do that. Like they can context switch, they can go from one problem to another. And sometimes even they're so good to get into this conversation and ask, can somebody provide me a quick summary of what's going on? Bring me up to speed. So you got to gauge that audience and then essentially trying to fit in. But from my point of view, the way I look at it is certain places you need explaining, right? And when you are trying to do that to a broader team setting or probably team plus plus setting, you trying to simplify it to the person who is probably not that much involved or not informed about what we are talking about, right? So essentially, your job is to bring the least informed person in the room to the best possible understanding. Going up, they have limited time and they have a broader set of things to manage. So you need to get their attention, what is needed for. What do you need a leader's attention? What do you need a board's attention, a CEO attention? What problem are you trying to solve for him? So every conversation you get into, always prepare. Think it through. What value I'm going to add to this conversation? Why are you even meeting with this person? And then I always challenge myself, even if it is a tough conversation, get to a spot where you make the other person feel good about the conversation, even if it's the toughest conversation out there. And bottom of it, like if you just really look at how do you get there, I think there is no science. I think it is a soft skill, it is an art, it is practicing, and it is also always understanding what is needed of you, right? Can you make this thing, whatever scenario you are in, can you make that particular scenario better, right? Incremental improvement is also a great thing to do. So sometimes you don't lose focus. I mean, sometimes you lose focus on those, but make the place the best possible based on the resources you have. And then you will see good outcome coming out of it.
Very cool. So many good pointers to keep in mind. Thank you so much for that. So, for ambitious directors like who want to move from exec roles, what is the one skill or mindset that they should start building today?
Practitioner to leadership transition, right? So depends on what area you are focused. Let's say if I focus on IT side of it or cyber side of it. So this particular role, IT side of the role is fairly new to me, but I was always been in cyber. So in cyber, sometimes if I talk to my mentors, mentees who are trying to be transitioning, I tell them in cyber there are like roughly 8 domains, and you cannot be good at all 8 domains. Try to be good at least 2, maybe 3. If a fantastic, could be 4. So go be the best product in one of these domains, or 2 or 3. Once you are there, then you have to understand that there are other domains possibly do not or cannot be the best product. So essentially, you have to surround yourself with other people. Then you have to start transitioning. So are you transitioning from a practitioner, mostly IC or already owner of a team or department, to a broader role? You have to understand who is your customer. Customer as in who is your internal customer, who is your external customer. Like pretty much all this, I always tell myself and the people around me, we report to everybody in my C-suite. So it's not one person you report to everybody. So essentially, you have to cater and understand, and particularly cyber roles or even IT roles, your enabler, your productivity, you're essentially enabling productivity. You're essentially making sure that there are various risks are mitigated. So to get to that level, you have to understand everybody's need. CS team will have a different need, engineering team, your product team, your go-to-market team, finance, right? So legal. So you have to understand everybody's need and trying to figure out how best you can help them, right? And essentially treat them as if they're your boss anyway. So never get into a meeting without being prepared and think about how can I add value to those conversation. So as somebody's trying to transition, it is definitely, I mean, obviously we talk about trust, but beyond trust, you need to make sure you are able to make other people's life better, right? Get into that mode of helping people in a positive way, uh, and don't create noise. I think that many of us in our world, like somebody told me, if I give you infinite amount of money, can you guarantee me 100% security of the organization? That doesn't exist. So figure out what you really want to focus, and what is needed for the organization you're part.
That's the bottom line. Okay, I asked plenty. So back to you, Abhishek.
So, Sangram, I'm curious, as you here sit at sort of dawn of very exciting times in AI, how do you see role of CIO changing, in the next 3 to 5 years?
Well, so in my scenario, both CIO and CISO has merged, and particularly because we don't buy, servers and rack and mount them. So that part of the world is cloud has taken over, and there are companies who are still running on data center, and you need to do that. But otherwise, if you're a cloud first organization, I think there is a huge synergy between CIO function and CISO function. There is definitely some aspect of conflict in priorities, like sometimes CISOs want breaks, while CIOs want can I have lesser amount of breaks in the process. So there's a balance between those two. But the way I look at it is you need to understand what's happening from a threat as well as from the economics of business. In the sense, uh, like there is a conversation happening, let's say, around architecture, right? Somebody will say, you know what, I can be a single tenant VPC solution, but that's essentially 30% expensive than multi-tenant solution, right? So as an IT leader, you cannot simply go and say, I'll do whatever, right? So you need to be on the table having those conversations that anything we produce is part of the bill of material of the organization, right? So CIOs tend to get, the CIO and CISOs tend to get, you have a budget or you go and secure or you go and do this for me. The transition is happening, particularly with the way AI being used, and the number of the kind of money you're throwing at AI. It is getting very expensive. Somebody has to pay the bills, and we will be asked to distill those basics, which I, in my opinion, is bill of material of any organization, right? And will be like many many other organizations will be under pressure to justify every dollar we spend. So you will, I think, a lot of CIOs, even today and more tomorrow, will be money managers. They have to manage relationship, they have to manage contract, they have to manage how best we swap tools. The conversation from POC is becoming POV, and we are talking about plug and play and various other things. So there is a transition which I see happening. And look, the reality is AI is for real, right? I don't think we'll talk about AI as AI the way we're talking about today. We don't really talk about computers today. We don't. So we use it. We don't even talk about memories in the computer today, right? So there'll be a time where we don't even want to really like. I mean, I would say probably AI is already out there in many ways or form. Like if you look at Google Maps till, algorithm of Netflix, so it is already in play. So it will be part of our life. And the interesting thing I see is the physical world has not changed, in the sense the physical world like robots or self-driving car, right? So this is there's infusion of AI. Will get into those which like consciously some decisions will be made, subconsciously some decisions will be made, and that's the reality. So self-driving car. I mean, I don't think people will. I mean, that's the reality. 10 years from now, people will get up and say, you know what, that's the best way to drive. I don't want to drive. So there are definitely a transition happening. We, from CIO CISO standpoint, need to adapt, and then I can go into other aspect of those conversation in terms of lesson state and other things. But end of the day, what value we provide to the business, how best the value can provide to the business, and continue to manage the resources effectively.
And Sangram, just to follow up on AI, you mentioned there's a lot coming on to you and CIOs and CISOs becoming money manager. How much of your time you see helping rest of the organization bring AI capabilities versus focus on day-to-day operations within IT and security? Like how much of your time, from you're spending on those two functions now? And where would you spend dollars?
I think it's a very good question, and I think from my point of view, and if I folks who I work with, if they get to listen to this, they know that I talk about AI ASAP. Like, why can't we have a piece of technology you can use today, right? Or yesterday, most possibly. Unlike once of CISOs say, don't do it, block it, this and that. I feel like unless until you try, you do not know, right? So, in fact, I will not name names, but there is a conversation where I said, look, you're asking me to approve something. Before you asking me to approve something, why don't you just go through this implementation? Figure out what's the onboarding, like what kind of access you are giving, what kind of data you are giving permission for this tool or technology to use, and what's the outcome you are getting. If you think all these are good for you, and tell me, let's sit down and do a risk assessment to find out is it good for the organization or not, right? So sometimes we think as if policy and block and this and that. But the reality is till you do not try, you do not know what's the outcome. In fact, there is one particular company I remember, we don't want to name it, we connected and disconnected within 24 hours. Getting before we got into this, we thought that's a fantastic product. And within 24 hours, we realized, oh shit, this is nothing. It's just the wrapper. So sometimes if you don't try it, you do not know, right? So and coming back to, I did a presentation in one of the all hands. I think we probably 20 plus AI tools we have in play already. Why? Because every product we use have got some AI, right? Right from your HR kind of tools to your tools within so-called sales processes. There are AI being put. I mean, even a simple tool like Zoom does, or Gemini. Right? Everywhere there is some of that has been sprinkled. So I think the conversation, if you're a leader, if you're not futuristic, not thinking about tomorrow, you're not inspiring to people. So, and you should be possibly one of the first ones to read, understand, and adopt, possibly lead the deployment of those technology into the organization, in my view.
This is fantastic, Sangram. So I think after this podcast, you will have a lot of startups coming in and talking to you because they're all looking for early adopters like yourself. So Sangram, we'll move now into quick rapid fire questions, like one or two answer, whatever comes top of mind. So what is your favorite leadership book that helped you think operate at scale? Or just like you talked a lot about trust, like where does that come from?
Well, I think there's some personal transformation I went through. I always thought being the specialist is the right thing, till the point one of the CISO or my boss gave me a book to read. It's called Range, right? It is David Epstein who wrote this book, Why Journalists Essentially Succeed in the World. And that is a good book for anybody who is trying to transition from the belief that I'm good at this and I should only do this to I can solve any problem, any business problem, right? So that was something I really liked. There's something I used to be like literally, I read it multiple times, is the mental models, the Medium article by Gabriel. So he is the founder of DuckDuckGo. Because in the language that we speak, it's all about how do you essentially understand each other. And this is, end of the day, it's a mental model. In fact, every organization I go to, I always create some sort of called mind map, right? So my first week or two will be always focused on creating a simplified visual of my tool stack, simplified visual of DevSecOps process, simplified visual of the tech stack, right? Why do I do it? Because if you don't understand, first you need to understand, you need to tell that story to others to understand. Then you get into substantial conversation that, oh, use of Orca for shift left is good, or use of GitLab Ultimate is good, or something, right? So you got to kind of get into those specifics for those conversations to happen. Malcolm Gladwell and Atul Gawande and others. So there are a lot of thought leaders out there, which
Yeah, Atul Gawande is fantastic. And yeah, Range is my favorite book. I mean, it's one of the favorites. It's a phenomenal book.
but there is also an newer information set coming up. I think, I personally have transitioned from reading some of those to more of podcast. And I can tell you some of my favorite podcasts as
Yes,
well.
please. Yes, that was my next question. Thank you.
Yeah, no. So, well, I'm a big fan of ASX&G. So anything and everything they do, I like. Every video is out there in public domain. Every podcast they have in public domain, I watch it. That's like must do. Just because the people behind that organization, the people, the thought process they have, the way they think, they do articulate is absolutely brilliant. I, from a cyber standpoint, I'm a big fan of destination certification. And those guys really do it well. Probably one of the best in cyber. In fact, they're putting out other videos like even what happened to XYZ hack, right? So that is a very interesting set of. And my son watches a lot of videos, and he forces me to watch some of it. I think he's a good visual learner, has a wide set of understanding of what's happening in the world. So I do follow some things he watch together in our living room. And then, I mean, all in podcast. I think many of you
Yeah,
know.
it's very
Uh,
entertaining. Yes.
well, it's besides entertaining, it is more informative than anything out there in from the so-called media, because media is just talking stuff doesn't make sense. I mean, we can agree to disagree some of the views they put it out there, but there is some depth to it. In fact, last time before election, when vice president walked on to the stage and talked about things, I was like, dude, any national media can pick up those videos and make news stories out of it, but nobody did anything out of it, right? That was interesting, but I feel those guys are definitely Silicon Valley's connection back to where it matters, right? I mean, if you are not leading and providing this so-called big tech and our ability to see things and help we as a country in general and continue to keep that competitive advantage, then we are kind of failing to do what we are supposed to do for the country. So I'm a big fan of that podcast as well.
Absolutely, Sangram. And one last question I have, but this is a new one where if you had $1 million, your CEO comes like, hey, Sangram, you have $1 million here. Where would you spend it? Would you spend on operational efficiency, or would you focus on different departments within the business on bringing AI and helping them? Because in a lot of organizations, they are not the technology leaders and they're so busy doing their day-to-day job, they may not have the expertise. So where would you spend your $1 million, Sangram? I'm very
Well, I
curious.
think based on my scope, well, so I mean, I would obviously say put every money to the product development, put every dollar to the go to market, because at the end of the day, you have to sell more, you have to grow, right? So that's what the right. But then from my department standpoint, I always look at in two distinct areas, right? So one is uh, enabling productivity, making sure we are able to provide the tooling needed for the organization to produce more, right? That's one. It doesn't mean there's a slapping AI is the only answer, but it's kind of has to be the answer, has been the answer for last few years. And on the other side of it, there are certain risk areas where I often wonder, but I could not go and tackle, right? Why? Because this is classic risk mitigation versus risk acceptance. There are times we have accepted certain risks because of we don't have the resources to go and execute on those. So I'll start getting into some of those high risk areas where we have decided so far not to spend. But that's so. I, in my view, you should not be spending a dollar if you do not have to spend a dollar, right? I think anybody who's listening to this will know that. That's I mean, this is same my personal life as well. If you do not need more than one car, you do not need more than one car. I think as simple as it, right? So, but when if you have the right resources, if you have the resources, let's use it in the right way. It has to do two things. It has to grow the business, or it has to make the business more productive, right? So that's the way I think.
This has been phenomenal, Sangram. Just love the conversation. So many grateful insights.
Thank you so much, Sangram and Abhishek, for the wonderful insights and great questions. And to dear listeners, hope you find as many insightful questions and insightful information you can. And thank you very much.